Okay, welcome to this open task force session 1 year after. And thank you everybody showing up here. We have reshuffled the process a little bit, because we got one person here that needs to run quite fast in that sense. So I'm sorry for the rest of you that has been pushed down a little bit, but that was logistical reasons. So without further ado, I give the word to Christos to talk about authentication and authorization. Come up. And Rosa will help you find your presentation.
Yes, I think it was somewhere. There it is. Yep. So, thank you, René. So, welcome everyone. This is a short presentation to present the status of the EOSC Task Force, what we have been doing in the last year. We had a session just a few minutes ago about the EOSC, and I actually do not see any face that was in that session, which is really good. Oh, yes, somewhere there. Sorry for you. So, folks, you have tolerated me a bit longer. I will go through a few things that I mentioned in the previous talk, but I will try to give them a different spin from a more high-level point of view and not go into so much technical details. So, a little bit about the task force. You can go and read the charter online, so I will not go and explain the charter one by one. But basically, what we're doing in the EOSC Task Force is that we're continuing the work that has started since many years now. We're not starting something from scratch. And from one point of view, we're kind of blessed in this because we already have a direction and where we're heading towards. But there's been lots of work taking place since 2012 with the Federated Identity Management for Research, FIM4R, which developed one of the initial roadmaps of what needs to take place in order to support federated access for research collaboration. Then we had the ARC project. We came with the concept of the ARC blueprint architecture, and I will mention a few things about this in a few moments, and EDGIS, which is the governing body. And also the EOSC task force that predated this task force, and it was in the context of the EOSC architecture working group. So we're building on top of the work of other people who have spent many years on this topic. And the main goals for the task force that we have started last year is basically to continue the evolution of the EOSC architecture, following the requirements that we were receiving from the users, from the research infrastructures, from the implementers, and also to further develop the content that was introduced in the previous report that was published by the European Commission around the EOSC Federation and how we further can extend that to support more use cases. So one primary goal is to deliver one version of the EOSC architecture, an update of this previous one, which will be the version 2022. And this should come out probably towards the beginning of December. And then we will have another version coming out at the end of 2023. Another area where we're working is the area of identification and acceptance of requirements. So we're working in two tracks. One track is based on the previous requirements that we have gathered, try to design the EOSC how it should look like, what it should be able to support in order to meet those requirements. And at the same time, we are working with the communities, with the users, the implementers, to understand what are the new requirements so that they can fit to the work that will be happening next year. Last but not least, something that we want also to focus a little bit, and I was very happy to hear Karel in another session to talk about the lifespan of the task forces, is really talk about and investigate the governance of the work that we're doing. As you have seen, these initiatives have been taking place for many, many years already, and we do need to have a constant body that looks after the EOSC architecture. So this is not a one-off thing that we're done and we put it on the side. So the governance model for the EOSC architecture, how is going to evolve, is something that we will be looking at the task force and try to see how we can make sure that there is somebody looking after this work and making sure that it evolves to meet the requirements of the users. So these are the charter main goals. And Basically, up to now, we spent most of the year focusing on the evolution of the EOSC AI architecture based on the requirements we had received from the previous task force. And I could say a few words about the baseline architecture for EOSC, which is based on the ARC blueprint architecture, but I will not spend too much time because I know we have only 10 minutes. I just put this slide here for your reference. If you go, you can read and get more information. And in other slides, I have also a link where you can find more information about the background story. But really, we're building on top of this work. So, for the EOSC Architecture 2022, the main focus had been 5 different areas, and we're sure when we start the work that we will not be able to cover all of them. We're aiming to cover half of them, but actually we're managing right now to cover most of them. So the first one was the consistent user experience and interfaces for service providers. The second one was the multi-infrastructure workflows. The third one is the scaling trust. The fourth is the growth of EOSC beyond research and education. And the last one is community attributes and authorization. And I will say just a couple of words for each one, just to give you the high-level context. Regarding the consistent user experience and interfaces for service providers, it was clear to us is that by developing EOSC and evolving and expanding the number of resources, expanding EOSC and the infrastructures that are part of it, we do create a complex ecosystem. And this complexity does drill down and affect the end users in the end. So today, users will have to go, select the community where they belong, then go and select the institution where they are coming from. Very complex processes that researchers that just want to do their science, they don't want to be bothered with. So we have been developing a number of specifications that would allow us to be smarter in this way, that would allow us for services that already know that this user is operating in the context of X collaboration to be able to drive the user experience of the user and send the user directly to the community and the IDP that they need to authenticate without having the user to always go around and click, 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 click just to make sure that they can do the authentication process. In the end of the day, what we want to achieve is users should not be talking about the login process. If we manage to make the AI a topic that only a few strange people are discussing in closed rooms and the users do not see it at all, this is what we consider our achievement. Another aspect has to do with the interfaces for services, and this is also very important. We need to be able to bring services to EOSC in the most efficient point of view, and if we make complex solutions that spill down to the services, then we make the life of the service providers more difficult. So this is an aspect also that we're taking care of, how to make the life of the way of integrating services to EOSC the easiest possible way. Regarding the second topic, this has to do with the multi-infrastructure workflows, and this is a requirement that got to us directly from the use cases that we are already supporting in EOSC, where many researchers want to use what we call complex workflows, but in reality is their day-to-day job. They want to be able to just submit an analysis on a compute cluster, perform the analysis, and have the results published to a data store. What is more simple than that? But yes, if you look behind the scenes, you have to be able to have agents running on behalf of the users to be able to understand when the computation finishes and to be able to act on behalf of the user to be able to store data on remote infrastructures. How can this happen in a way that the user doesn't see this at all? We have a solution already in place that can deliver this, and this is something that we're delivering now with the version of the EOSC architecture version 2022, and that's something that we will further be evolving in the next versions of the EOSC architecture. So the third point is scaling trust. And already we are seeing the EOSC expanding. We have already reduced the concept of the EOSC Federation to enable the scalability of trust for direct user access, and now we need also to think about how to scale trust when we have the complex workflows that I described before. I will not go in details now. You can read about these things in our architecture document, but all this requires a lot of technology to be able to satisfy the requirements for scaling trust at the levels that we need it to happen. And the one before the last is the growth of EOSC beyond the research and education community. And although the majority of our users are researchers, we do understand that we have a lot of citizen scientists. We have also perhaps users coming from the commercial world, and we need to be able to have seamless access, inclusive access for everyone. So we're working also to enable access to services using national IDs. There are many initiatives right now from the European Commission that try to enable European citizens to have the national ID and be able to use it in an interoperable manner across Europe. And we are already working in leveraging these capabilities to enable researchers to use exactly these facilities to be able to identify themselves. And last but not least is the community attributes and authorization. And there we see a very interesting shift in the paradigm of how authorization and access to resources is taking place. Up to now, we have been talking about community-based access, where basically a researcher is able to access, share resources with their fellow researchers by the mere fact that they're members of the same collaboration, the same community. But we see also that more and more researchers are required to have a different type of access, where effectively they submit proposals and will be granted access to specific specialized resources based on the merit of the science they propose. And there the access is not granted based on the fact that the user is coming from community X, but based on the fact that the proposal was accepted and the user is able now to create a project on the given highly valuable resource to access these resources for a given specific time. So these are things that now we're incorporating in the EOSC AI architecture, which, as I mentioned, will come out at the end of the year, version 2022. Many of these things will be covered there, and we expect another version at the end of 2023, where we'll be closing basically this whole scope of requirements and we'll be able to deliver this as the next basis for the implementation of the EOSC AI. So that's all I had to say. I don't know if you have time for questions.
Short questions, very short, because we've got 6 more contributors.
Initially, you said that you were thinking about the governance as well.
The governance of the EOSC architecture, yes.
Yes, but I mean, some of us in the task forces, that my next presentation is also, some part of it includes sort of thinking about the governance. So the question is here, are we going to introduce a bit of the governance structures that for the various aspects of EOSC that maybe needs to be coordinated on the sort of organizational level?
Actually, the thinking was much simpler. The phrase might allow the mind to go and create many interesting thoughts. But what we wanted to make sure is that the work in the task force will find a place afterwards to continue. So when we started this work, we didn't know exactly how the task force are going to work. What is the lifespan? And that's why I said I was very happy to hear Karel saying that the expectation that the task forces will continue. So effectively, Karel answered our question by himself, saying that the task forces will be there to be able to support this kind of work in the at least foreseeable future. So I think this is a very good development.
Other questions?
Short, please.
Thank you. Hi, Stephen Sargent from the Open University. I just had I'm going to do that terrible thing and have a comment rather than a question. It's that you mentioned in the context of citizen science, it was beyond the research sector, if I remember rightly. I would argue that citizen science is not beyond the research sector. It is a tool for doing research. That's its reason for existence. So I think it is part of the research sector.
Fully agree with you. I want to make it not part of the traditional research structures where they have access to identities, etc. So they can enable also this type of research to be able to happen. Fully agree with you.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think I'm going to cut it short here. The whole discussion about governance in that sense, I think that word is also used very broadly. So that I think is something we can take between the task forces themselves, and that's all. Thank you, Christos. Next up is rules of participation. Raimundas, we are finding your slide.
Yeah. You got the second?
I hope.
Yeah, I hope. We'll see. Is this one yours?
Yeah.
So, good. Except I don't have too much slides, but I will rather use this one. So, what we are doing in the Rules of Participation Task Force, first of all, we are defining the architecture of the Rules of Participation, which includes a discussion on what does it mean to participate in EOSC, so that it is not a monolithic block or black and white, participate or not participate, but it is a spectrum of levels from the participation, from any organization being found in EOSC, to the organization assuming roles and contributing to EOSC with their assets being findable in EOSC and integrated with the EOSC core services and allowing the interoperability between the assets by various organizations. So that is a spectrum that includes also that architecture includes definition of that spectrum for the various actors and various roles of EOSC, and also the boundaries of responsibility. Because for the rules of participation, from the point of view of rules of participation, what are the requirements and who sets the requirements to various levels of participation, to various levels of integration within the EOSC framework. So it will not be possible to have this sort of rule-setting function in the single organization, because at some level the rules and requirements are too detailed to be managed by the single organization and are too to be scalable in the framework of EOSC, that responsibilities will have to be delegated. So that's one. We are hoping to bring the draft architecture of the rules of participation for the community discussion at the end of the winter. So far, and we are looking also into the monitoring process, and that involves the governance structures, because there has to be a monitoring process of compliance to the rules of participation, but also the pathways for the escalation. And that involves having the structure or delegated authority for resolving the conflicts. More importantly, we are currently, the rules of participation is not starting from scratch. So there are rules of participation that outline 8 fundamental principles. So we are working from there, essentially elaborating to translate those principles into the actual inclusion criteria for the various levels, and to delegate creation of that inclusion criteria to the other entities. So for that, there has to be also the function of conflict resolution, and those rules of participation and inclusion criteria have to be adopted, because currently the rules of participation are published and that's it. They are a document of the European Commission, but who adopts them and who has to enforce them? So far, within our task force, the view is that it should be EOSC Association who adopts the rules of participation as an association of the wide spectrum of the stakeholders, and who would be able then to enforce that. So that's why the intention is to have the documents, the wide, publicize the results widely, so that we can accumulate also the input from the community and have that and incorporate that, so that we can adopt and we can make sure that this is something that we agree upon,
that this architecture and these rules are something that we agree upon ourselves as a community, as an association, and to also formally adopt that in the association and to enforce that. So also for that, we are thinking about what happens after the charter of the task force ends, and that could involve creation of the body that is being delegated the authority, but currently it is in a thinking process. But if the task force will continue, then it may be different. So we are also looking at the value proposition for the various actors to engage in the EOSC. So that's the basic themes that we are working on as far as the deliverables go. So we have the architecture and updated rules of participation in the process of creation. Other deliverables like the governance framework and the monitoring are still in the level of planning. So the first one will be towards the end of the winter. Will be the architecture for the stakeholder engagement. And I'm out of time.
2 minutes.
Okay. So regarding the strategic input to the SHIA, we have not considered that in the task force, to be honest. In detail. So what we can do is to work on the architecture of and responsibilities, so that the strategic innovation agenda reflects the multi-stakeholder environment of EOSC and multi-stakeholder environment of rules of participation. But what can our group contribute to what more can our task force contribute to the document and to the strategic agenda in general? That remains to be seen, and we will address that in the upcoming meetings. So that's a quick summary of the group, and we had. If I save some time, maybe we can have some questions. It works.
No, we will do that. If there's any quick questions.
Yes, Ignacio.
Thank you, Raimundas, for the presentation. Just to be sure that I understand properly the architecture definitions, you mean procedural, components, elements, organization? Because, I mean, I cannot precise for myself.
Okay, so architecture will hopefully will contain two things, at least. Discussion on the levels of participation and definition of what does it mean to participate and what does it mean to participate for the different actors. The detail of that elaboration, what does it mean to participate for the different actors, currently is being defined. What it will contain, the elaboration on value proposition for the different actors, for the different levels of participation. And the third thing will be the responsibilities. So who actually has to define and who is responsible for conflict resolution? Who is the first responsibility for conflict resolution for each level of participation? For example, if hypothetically integration with the EOSC core has a requirement, so for the integration with EOSC core, we foresee that the requirements will be set by the owners of the EOSC core services or operators of the EOSC core services, essentially. And if some requirements will not look fair for some entity. They have to have a place to go for the conflict resolution, because obviously the owner who sets the rules will say that no, I am good enough and you have to comply. And if the entity does not, or the organization does not want to comply, they have to have a body or a address to go for to say that, look, we don't think this is good for us. So these are the three main items for the architecture.
Thank you.
Other very short questions? Otherwise, thank you very much for your contribution. Next up is fair metrics and data quality. I think I left out quality in that one, but sorry for that.
So thank you. So yes, this is the task force on fair metrics and data quality, and these are the slides by our co-chairs, Carlo and Mark Wilkinson. And I'm Mari Kleemola. I'm a task force member. I'm from the Tampere University Finnish Social Science Data Archive and CESTA, and because Mark and Carlo couldn't be here, so it's now my task to present very quickly a lot of slides. But I will skip some of them. So this is a task force where we have 26 members, and we come from various disciplines and many countries. We have two subgroups, as you can guess, the fair metrics and the data quality part. I'm involved in the fair metrics part. We've had a lot of meetings, and everything has been online, so it's very nice to see people here now face to face. I will not read these goals. You will see what we have done, and I think we have pretty well achieved the goals, or almost achieved the goals already now. So first, about the data quality group. So this is the list of things that has been done in the data quality group. So far, they have reached a common understanding about quality approaches. There's been a lot of desk research. They've researched various initiatives and gathered all this information. And of course, the people in the group already knew a lot of these things. There's a recommendation document that should be available anytime now. And they've also done a survey, like so many of us. But this was already in spring. So all this information and all this collection of information has led to this recommendation document. There are a lot of insights from the survey. I'm not going to read through them, but you can see the word cloud there. So there are things that you would expect to see, like data quality work is very time consuming. You need experience to do it. It can be very complex. There are no tools. And I mean, one of the things that's very close to my heart is also the legacy thing. So if you have a repository that has been there for dozens of years, then you have a lot of legacy data and a lot of legacy metadata, and upgrading that is a huge task. So the recommendation document will contain, of course, recommendations. So, for example, there needs to be contextual metadata, and that's very closely connected to fairness of the data as well. It was very clear that the respondents of the survey didn't want EOSC in charge of data content, scientific content assessments. I don't think EOSC wants to do that. But this was also very clear that this was a concern, clearly. And there needs to be quality functions, and of course, community standards is a thing that comes up in data quality as well. So all of these things that I think we've heard a lot of during this conference as well. And there's also some minimum requirements, and so this will all be in the recommendation document available very soon. So that was the data quality part. Then we have the fair metrics group. And this group had 3 key objectives, and I'm going to go through them quite quickly to show what we have done so far and what you can expect. So first, we have explored issues related to the governance of fair evaluations. So who has the authority there? What should be tested? What is the correct test, so to speak? And what is a successful result? What is fair enough? And we know of at least 17 different fair evaluation systems. Maybe there are more now. I mean, these keep popping up. This was written like 2 weeks ago. So, yeah. So what we have done, we have written this white paper on governance, and that is something. It's not. It's very much a discussion starter. So we want feedback from you and from all the stakeholders. We need this discussion about governance models, and we want to have something that is trusted by the community. So we get back to the communities. And this is on the pipeline as well, should be out any time now, but unfortunately I can't give you a link at this moment. The other problem that we've taken a look at is the inconsistency of the fair evaluation tools and the scores that they give. So here's an example. The exhibit A, the upper one, is the fair evaluator. And you can see it gives a score of 20 out of 22 requirements. So very high fair score. And at the same time, the bottom, that's the Fuji tool, and it gives 2 out of 24. So a very low score, and this is the same entity that is being assessed. So there's clearly a lot of work to do there. And what we have done, we've had hackathons, and we have a paper we call the Apples to Apples paper, so a hackathon paper coming out where we are making some recommendations, and I think the most important one is that we recommend using fair signposting, and this is something that has been agreed with the developers of various fair evaluators. And there's a metadata harvesting engine, so I think this is a sort of commercial by Mark, but there's this to help about fair signposting. The third key objective was evaluate the applicability and uptake of fair metrics. And this is something that is ongoing. We actually are doing a survey, and that opened yesterday. So there's the link, and the slides will be shared. And I guess you will be receiving email about this, maybe from several sources. So just please take 15 to 30 minutes and respond to this survey. I know we do a lot of surveys, but still, this is important. It will be open until the 2nd of December. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very quick presentation. I was a little bit more nervous when I saw the length earlier today. Any questions?
So thank you very much for the presentation. With respect to the inconsistencies among the different evaluator tools, I mean, I was suffering this inconsistency into the I was the most difficult one. If I understood properly, it's because in the I you have to evaluate compatibility with different metadata standards of the communities, and there's a lack of plugins for that. Is this the point?
Well, that's one of the points, but there's also a lot of technical details on how the content negotiation is done and so forth. So, but also how you interpret the metrics, and what is your basically how you emphasize the results, and how many metrics are you using. We saw the example 22 and 24. Why? I mean, it's the same fair principles. So there are a lot of details. And how you get, and also I might add that the different versions of the evaluators, of course, give different results as well, since this is still a work that is very much ongoing. So these are tools that are being developed.
Thank you. Other questions? Then I think we say thank you and get ready for the next one, which is upskilling. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Very quick, please, while we do the change.
And maybe a small provocative thing on these metrics is we are speaking about FAIR principles, and principles usually don't align very well by being parameterized into numbers. So that could be also one of the reasons that the various things happen. I mean, also from another experience that is not related to principles but to compatibility and compliance with some specific technical thing, there still are issues there to really parameterize and have a number or a set of numbers to say this is good, this is not, and why. So maybe here it's more complex for the fact that we are speaking about principles.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, and we've discussed this within the group and also in the governance paper, and that's why we need some governance, and then so that we know what is sort of good and what is good enough, and that there's some approval mechanism for some of the tests at least. So yeah, but it's a very good point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the papers will come out. The task force has been, just give it to me, I'll grab it. They've been very productive, so I can guarantee you there will be a lot to read. And with that, we're skipping to upskilling.
Thank you. So I'm very pleased to present the work of our task force with under the lead of Jessica Lindvall, our chair, and we have prepared that with Bernd Sauhuger. We are task leaders, and you have tomorrow morning a second talk about our task force with Helen Clare, our co-chair, and Jessica Lindvall. So don't miss it as well. We are 16 countries in the task forces, and according to our chart, our task force is actively working to share both progress and challenges in a way to encourage countries and scientists to become more conscious of and engaged in the EOSC. As you will see, we are 16 countries, and we would be delighted to become still more represented countries to continue our work. So please join, be in contact with the chair and co-chairs. If you don't see your country on the map, we would be eager to have still countries with us. We have a chair and 3 co-chairs and 25 members representing a lot of diversity of domains, I must say. And you have here a QR code that could allow you to join a poster. You can also find a poster about our task force. And we have started quite late the work because our kickoff meeting was in February. But we have started to share knowledge, to encourage ourselves on the road of open science. And as you can see here, since spring, we had already all these presentations either on countries or domains. Because one of the main things we have learned so far is that we need synergy between domains, disciplines, and countries to go towards open science. We have chosen 4 examples to show to you what we are sharing together, 2 countries and 2 domains. How is it for open science and EOSC in these 4 examples? And I allow me to read because each member has written a text for commenting the slides. The first slide has been prepared by Bernd Sauhuger and is about Austria, a country already very well structured in EOSC. The EOSC Support Office Austria is an Austrian EOSC mandated organization which aims to implement the EOSC on an Austrian level. The EOSC Support Office Austria consists of its governance and several working groups. In the governance, the General Assembly is the ultimate decision-making body. The management ensures the optimization of processes and is subdivided in a rotating management board and a consistent EOSC Support Office Austria Secretariat. It further consists of the steering committee, which gives impulses for its basic orientation, and the synergy team that coordinates the work of the working groups. And in Austria, we have notably noticed that the innovative EOSC Cafe was something very successful, now happening in diverse countries. And it's often a good way to start in a country something about EOSC with the EOSC Cafe. Austria has also established a website, a collab working space, and a Zenodo community with 17 mailing lists. So if you have questions, feel free to visit the website, or you have also Bern here in the room if you have questions for Austria. The next slide is North Macedonia. The main activities related to EOSC in this country, as coordinated at the national level, in the Open Science Cloud entitled NOSCI at MK. It brings together all interested individuals that have accepted the OS declaration and would like to promote the OS principles in the national level together with the organizational members that currently represent the National Research and Education Network and all state-funded universities. NOSCI at MK has been established with the help of the regional EOSC project NI4OS Europe and has been working hard to promote OS in the country and help members adopt open science policies, but also prepare their infrastructure and services for EOSC. An interesting point is that one of the main targets for NOSCI is to boost open sciences for young researchers and PhD students to make sure that they are ready for the new EOSC-supported research environment. NOSCI at MK members, especially the chosen national EOSC promoters and OS ambassadors, aim at helping North Macedonia define a set of national legislation policies that will support and recognize OS practices. So you have here an example of a quite small country, but very lively and decided to go in the direction of open science. Now we have a domain, open science in mathematics, and this slide has been prepared by Betül Tanbay, who is Vice President of the European Mathematical Society, and the President is maybe here in the room or here at the conference, in any case, if you have further questions. The European Mathematical Society is an umbrella organization for almost all European mathematical societies, including Caucasian, Near Eastern or Middle Eastern countries. Mathematicians, although not always enough connected to research in other fields, have managed to use technology to be able to openly write and share new knowledge, and already since a bunch of years or even decades. Among the tools, you have several of them. I point to archives. I think we are really several to know it. It's well known and used for more than 30 years as open access repository of e-prints to share mathematical knowledge. It's used by several domains today. And the Digital Mathematics Library, formalized at the beginning of this century, digitalized all published mathematics since Euclid up to the advent of electronic publishing. It gathers together a reference corpus highly navigable and freely accessible. The European DML is an EC project now based in Berlin. And last but not least, I end with my domain. I'm a humanist scholar myself. So that's just one slide for all humanities and social sciences. You have heard a lot of things about shock and the diverse involvement of SSH in EOSC. And I must really underline that for humanities and social sciences, EOSC has a decisive effect. Indeed, we had the project cluster shock from 2018-2022, and it had a strong impact on us because it had just allowed to gather together all these great communities from Daria, Clarin, CESDA, European Survey, Share, all these stakeholders. So 47 stakeholders in humanities and social sciences. And it was really a first important progress in the discussion of sciences. Shock has produced, as you know, an open marketplace very well formed with a lot of useful services and data and tools inside of it. And the next step is a challenge. That's a challenge of the EOSC portal, and we had this morning a discussion about that. I raised the point about how is it going between SHOC and the EOSC portal. So you see that you have a slide for humanities in the middle of the screen, and also for social sciences. So at the moment, SHOC has been integrated as one thing in the EOSC portal, but if you look for different resources, you are not finding them all on the EOSC portal. So probably, as discussed this morning, we still need a fine-tuning to have really access in details to all the resources of the SHOC marketplace on the EOSC portal. But in summary, for us, for humanities and social sciences, EOSC is really a great opportunity to work together. In conclusion, what we have learned so far, a task force is an innovative form of sharing knowledge between domains and countries, and I defend it quite a lot. And according to our charter, our task force is proud to assist and support the onboarding initiatives of EOSC, promote the exchange of approaches across the member states and regions, organizations and groups, foster improvements covering areas such as policy development, infrastructure, investment or skills in the respect of the needs of each nation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Any quick questions? No, I think you're off the hook. And next one that we have on the list is research engagement and adoption. Catherine.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like...
You just continue.
Okay.
I'm just trying to help out here.
Okay, I'm a little small. Yeah, I would like to explain today, or to speak for our Task Force Research Engagement and Adoption, and I'm representing here our task force and especially the co-chairs of the task force and also the leaders of the subgroups we have. You find here all the names, and especially also Katharina Flicker, who is supporting us greatly in the last year. So we are one of 3 task forces in the advisory group implementation of EOSC. So there's PID policy implementation, the task force of rules of participation, compliance monitoring, and then we are there, the nice title, research engagement and adoption. I don't know what is your feeling, but my feeling is strongly that we are at least one of the most inconcrete task force of all. So, and this doesn't make it very easy to really provide a good working program for like a 2 years period, what was aimed to. But we have done that. So first of all, we have selected quite a number of participants, 42 in total. We have in the selection, because it's supposed to be research engagement and adoption, we have cared very strongly for having as many researchers on board as possible, but also to include a very diverse spectrum of people from very diverse institutions. So we have quite a lot of researchers, but we have also very many people from infrastructure institutions and also a few of kind of funding institutions. For instance, myself, I'm from the German Research Foundation as a national funding organization for curiosity-driven research. Yeah, I'm speaking here as one of 3 co-chairs. Franziska de Jong is one of our co-chairs, and Sverker Holmgren. Franziska is here as well, so she can also answer to questions if you have some. Also, Katharina Flicker is here. She will be happy to answer as well. And we are being supported by, or we have been supported by Suzanne Dumochel, and right now we are being supported by Sarah Garavelli. Okay, our objectives, as I said, research engagement and adoption is is centered around engaging researchers, and our core aim, our core objective is to identify the needs and requirements of researchers. This is most important if you believe that EOSC should be built up in a science-driven way. So we aim to support the engagement of researchers and their communities with EOSC. We suggest measures to increase the participation so that they can come up with telling us their needs and requirements, so that we ensure, or we aim at least to ensure, that EOSC services will be of actual use. This can only be done if we give hearing to the needs of the scientists. We also, again and again, end up in discussing and also have to explain somehow what is EOSC, what is it good for the researchers. I think this is some point that is still in development also, the concrete answer to this question. But this is also one of our objectives, to be able to concretely say to the researcher, okay, we are providing this and this and this, and you can make use of this, and this will be very useful for your actual work. And of course, one instrument will be to identify suitable channels for communication. As I said, this topic is very broad, very complex, and very diverse. So we structured the task force into 3 areas, allowing for different perspectives. On the one hand side, institutional or disciplinary perspective that aims to bring awareness and requirements of different institutions. Then we have the national perspective that aims to support the creation of tailored engagement strategies on the national level, and also to connect with national initiatives and institutions. And overall, of course, the overall aim would be to align somehow a consistent OS or open science, to align open science and to allow for consistent development of open science, considering the fact that Europe is very diverse, that research conditions and also the philosophy of open science is very diverse in Europe, and that we have very different socioeconomic characteristics. And then we have the European or international perspective, and this aims to better understand and categorize the target group. It follows, or it aims to follow and collaborate with European projects, clusters, initiatives, and to identify best ways and practices with respect to communication channels. And we hope with this approach, to ensure the balanced involvement between the different perspectives. Of course, we have to connect with a variety of different institutions, projects, and boards with different projects. EOSC for Future, for instance, the funded projects within the calls by the Commission. At an institution, national, European level, we have to collaborate with directors' conferences, for instance, with RDA national nodes, with national research data management initiatives, or data institutes, university networks, and so on. And also, I think it's very worthwhile to collaborate with the ERIC Forum, with the RDA communities, and last but not least, with the EOSC bodies and other task forces, such as, for instance, as we heard, the Task Force Upskilling Countries for Engagement in EOSC, which has some overlap with our objectives. What are our ongoing and planned activities? This is again categorized along the 3 perspectives, or the subgroups. You see here also the subgroup leads. So on the institutional perspective, the subgroup will collect the requirements of researchers and their respective communities regarding open science and fair data or objects. They will identify and analyze gaps in terms of what kind of knowledge and which skills relating to fair and open access are lacking, to implement fair principles and to make sense of and use EOSC services. Then the group of having the national perspective will collect and describe the national structures, and also will define and collect success stories to support further engagement, and also to provide a knowledge exchange and possibly also the adaptation of the success models in other countries. The European group will conduct a landscape analysis of various stakeholders to be used for methodical and efficient engagement activities, and they will also give recommendations for engagement activities on the basis of this analysis. We expect as core outputs recommendations on training materials to be distributed and shared, for instance, by the task force upskilling countries or for the skills for EOSC, to be provided by the institutional perspective. The group, with having the national perspective, will give a list of national structures and a collection of success stories, and the European perspective subgroup will provide a map of relevant stakeholders on the European level and recommendations on engagement activities. What are our next step? And I think this meeting here helps a lot to define it a little more. At least, of course, the next step would be to work hard and provide results and deliverables in the next weeks and months to come. On the basis of what we have then from the 3 subgroups, I think we will have to evaluate the approaches and methodologies, and we'll have to see whether we have to adjust a little bit with this respect. Then I think one activity we already started, but we have to push more, is to collaborate with the neighboring task forces in order to work in a complementary way and provide synergistic work. We already had a meeting here with the 3 task groups, including upskilling, for instance, and have seen that there are very many, there's quite some overlap in specific, at least specific areas of the task forces work, which we should consider and which they should consider our work, and then eventually we would have to adapt our focus and working program and also maybe also our structure. We would have to see that. And last but not least, I think very important will be to observe EOSC projects and initiatives which are having money actually to provide data analysis and which we should make use of. I think this we should make use of more strongly than we have done until now. And yeah, this is in principle what I wanted to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Anybody with a question, comment they want to give Catherine? Doesn't appear to be so. Oh.
Yeah, hi. Just a quick comment. I know that in the EOSC Focus project, we just had a look at all the national structures and yeah, please in your work forward, make sure to make the connection so that we don't do everything twice. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Next up is data stewardship.
Thank you. So I'm Ilira from Graz University of Technology and one of the co-chairs of the Task Force Data Stewardship Curricula and Career Paths. And it is my pleasure to present our work on behalf of all Task Force members. So I would like to give you an overview of our task force. As in all other task forces, we have a very good representation of European countries and different disciplines. We have 25 members coming from 18 European countries and also covering different stakeholders, starting from universities and other research performing organizations, also national initiatives and infrastructures, EOSC-related projects and research infrastructures. We are very happy that through our dissemination activities, we were able to hire 5 new members in the last months, so that we have also a better coverage of disciplines and different competencies. We had a change in a co-chair, so I started to co-chair the task force with my colleague Vera Matzer, and she left in April. So since April, I'm doing this activity together with my colleague Celia van Gelder. What do we do in our task force? We have heard in different sessions during the symposium that data literacy in a context of having specific skills and competences is one of the key factors in order to realize this cultural change, which we need in order to implement open science principles and also EOSC. We believe in our task force that data stewards play a crucial role in this regard. What are data stewards and what do they do? This new role is being established on different institutional and also national levels. So data stewards support researchers in different questions regarding research data management through the whole life cycle of research data. Usually they bring also a discipline-specific perspective, and ideally they possess technical knowledge. There is a lot of work that is already published in regard to data steward models, in regard to their roles, activities, competences, but we realize that there is no European alignment on curricula, so training for data stewards is not established yet, and also on their career paths. Okay, institutions hire data stewards, but what is the perspective for them? Usually they change from a research position to a more admin position, and we have to make sure that we give them a perspective. So our goals within the task force are as follows. We want to work together to define data steward roles and also curricula and make sure that they are recognized and aligned across Europe. We want to work also on career paths and also make sure that there is a recognition and reward for data management activities. We want to engage with all stakeholders. As already mentioned, there is already work that we can build upon. So our aim is to build, connect, and also consolidate. We want to identify use cases and try to implement our theoretical work with practical examples. How we are structured? We have defined 4 main tasks that are structured in 2 work streams. Task 1 and 4, which is stakeholder management and dissemination and also implementation examples using practical use cases, are more horizontal tasks that are visible in 2 work streams. And then we have 2 main topics, which are a minimal curricula being work stream 1 and then career paths being work stream 2. We have task co-leads in both sides. We have our plenary meetings, which are monthly meetings, and we have work stream regular meetings and also writing sprints. What have we done until now? One of the key objectives was alignment also in our task force. So we wanted to make sure that first of all we have an overview of all stakeholders. We captured good practices, implementation examples, and also other recommendations that came from the stakeholders. And we made sure that we are very good aligned with RDA interest groups. So there are 2 interest groups that work on the similar topics, data stewardship and also education and training, and we have joint sessions with them. We have also an overlap in our membership. We also tried to align with other task forces that are in our advisory group. And of course, when it comes to European projects, Skills for EOSC is one of the projects that is very relevant for us. So we initiated and we started the communication and coordination with them as well. But our work is also based on the recommendations that were published by the previous working group, which is Digital Skills for Fair and Open Science. So we made sure with different dissemination activities that we reach out to stakeholders that were already identified in this report. In regard to data stewardship curriculum, we are working on our first report, where we focused more on data stewards' roles, core activities, and other specializations. We aim to come with a defined training and to define some levels that are needed for different data steward roles, and also produce some guidelines for data stewardship curricula. So we have structured our literature review on skills, roles, and competences, and also on models and on landscape studies, and then training and curricula. We know that especially the RDA interest group is doing work in this direction. So they just published a landscape study, and one of our task force members is also the main author of this report. So now we work together with them in order to complement our work and not to duplicate that. This is a very good basis because it informs us where are the main gaps when it comes to training of researchers, but also training data stewards. And we identified the main topics, so we will be working together with them on elaborating these topics. Then our report will be also structured in a way that we want to have all perspectives from all stakeholders visible in this report. So starting from national perspectives, such as policymakers and funders. Also on an institutional level, we have research performing organizations and other research infrastructures. So we have task force members that very well can contribute by bringing these perspectives. We identified also 10 country perspectives, and there we will work based on the use cases and on the reports that our task force members bring in the first place. When it comes to data stewardship career paths, we have a consolidated draft of our first report, which is a state-of-the-art report, and we will be submitting to the review process already established by EOSC Association. And there, our goal was to highlight that it's not enough just to hire data stewards, but there has to be some alignment in making sure that career paths for data stewards are also established. And I want just to highlight the very first insights from this report. We found out that there are very few empirical sources available when it comes to career paths. So also developing sustainable career paths was not a focus, and it was not done in a systematic way from different institutions. And we also, when talking to data stewards that already have this role, we realized that they are not considered on the same level as researchers, and this might be a problem also for future. So I don't know how high the motivation will be for them to stay in that roles, and especially if they do not have long-term contracts, but if they are paid project-based. And we found out that data stewardship roles require also strong technical backgrounds, and this is missing in available training programs. We will come with some recommendations, and here just to summarize, these recommendations will be in the direction that if we want to have a very well-aligned career paths or also documents where these are visible, then we have to consider these aspects like educational history, including whether these data stewards have, for example, a PhD or not. Official job title, because they usually do different tasks and this is not very well defined in their job description. Their role within the institution, if they want to be involved in their research or if they do only admin tasks. What about other leadership and training opportunities and the overall job satisfaction? What we are planning for the upcoming months, as already said, we want to submit our report on career paths to be reviewed. Then we want to finalize our first report on minimal curricula, and we will start a consultation process with the community. We will continue our alignment with RDA interest groups, and we found out, for example, that they already run a survey, so we will follow up together with them on structured interviews. There is another survey that was conducted by Open Air Task Force on Data Steward, and we will organize a joint meeting with Skills for EOSC project. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Illyria. Thank you, Illyria. Any questions? Franziska?
Thank you for this very interesting overview for a very important topic. Have you also identified which organizations you could send this report to that have a role of employer? Because they will need to adopt any policies.
Yeah. So we will use our task force members because they have this overview when it comes to national level, and we identified already some universities that we can send this report. So we will try to disseminate it as much as possible on different levels. I think for the management level of universities, we should have a short summary because no one wants to read long reports. So we will, but it's a good point. We will make sure that we have presented our recommendations in a compact way.
And there are, of course, also societies or alliances of universities and other academic institutes, also European-wide. Huh?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I realize that there are some countries that are not represented in your task force, and maybe we could help on that. For example, Spain is not there. Maybe we could try to find other people that could help you on, having the contact and helping on the dissemination.
Thank you. This is very helpful.
Any other questions, comments? Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, thanks for the interesting presentation. A small comment is that I see the issue of data stewards back in the days when it was the same issue with bioinformaticians. Most of bioinformaticians, they are either biologists who learn some IT and statistics, or computer scientists who learn biology. And then it was this workflow, what is their career path, how they should be defined, should they have a PhD, the same questions. So the comment here is maybe there can be some learning from the history of how bioinformaticians became, the concept is now very well known. So data stewards may take the same path.
Thanks a lot, and we can maybe discuss this later. If you have any sources, that would be really appreciated and helpful for us.
Thank you. Any further? Otherwise, going once, going twice, going three. I will give the word to financial sustainability. That seems to be Jan. He's at least moving. So last but not least. So I'm last. You're last.
So now that everyone's awake, and I'm still alive, right? So that's good. Raising the microphone, moving closer.
I'll chop off your legs, so then we'll get you further down.
As you can see, there is a very friendly Nordic interaction going on here.
Nordic-Dutch interaction.
Nordic-Dutch interaction.
Take it away.
Yeah. So, Financial Sustainability Task Force 1 year later. So we're a group of approximately 30 people. We have Mr. Bob Jones as our board liaison. We're part of the advisory group Sustaining EOSC. I'm one of the co-chairs, and over there, looking carefully down, is my other co-chair, Theo Robertson. We had a session earlier today. Was anyone here there? Yeah, okay, right. Then you have heard this before because I copied and pasted a chunk of the slides from there. There you go. Is this actually readable? Our objective is to produce by 2023, that's next year, right, a proposal for the long-term financial sustainability of the main building blocks of the EOSC, which are the core, the exchange, and the federation of data. Long-term financial sustainability covers the period of 2027 and beyond, so after the current framework program. To do that, we have the basic thing that we do is review all the relevant documentation, we talk to people, we have discussions, blah, 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 and then hopefully something constructive comes out of that. We have 2 deliverables. One is in this year, which is essentially an interim overview of the current state of the discussion, a first set of financial scenarios that provide some sustainable financing solutions for that. And then sometime next year, there will be a final report with recommendations. So what we're essentially doing is we're trying to come up with a way to tame this gigantic beast known as EOSC and try to identify, right, so what are the pieces that need to be financed, how much financing is needed, and how can you do that in a sustainable way? And a sustainable way is definitely not looking at the EC to do this until the end of time. I think I will simply skip that. We have a timeline, I kind of went through that. The important thing to highlight today is we have just released our interim progress report. It's out there, you can read it. The links are there, but because you'll never be able to type that from here, the easier way to get access to it is go to eosc.eu, click in on advisory groups, find sustainability, click on ours, and then it's under the output. And there you'll find that report. What is, I actually wrote that down there, what do you know? Check outputs on the right-hand side of that page. That's not that relevant. That's, if you're interested, you can look at the slides, but that's how we organize things. So remember, proposal for long-term, right, 2027 and beyond, financial sustainability of those components. The key questions there are what, how much. The what proved surprisingly difficult. The core is relatively well defined. The exchange is definitely not. Other than that, it's a marketplace for services. Yeah, what kind of marketplace? For whom? Is it business to consumer? Is it business to business? Business to what kind of business? Business to all the possible institutions, of which there are thousands, to the aggregators. Different problems, different solutions, different funding and financing consequences. Something that I didn't mention this morning, but we had a lot of discussions during the day. So there is an interplay between governance, operations, and the financing of the EOSC and the type of dynamic that you wish to create. And that's pretty hard to capture in 30 pages, to be honest. So we've invested quite a bit of time in identifying what needs to be financed, trying to scope that work, trying to scope the exchange, the core, and the federation of data in terms of financial sustainability, so that we then can actually say something sensible about how you do that and what the cost would be. For the core, this is, as I said, relatively straightforward. The hard part is pinning a number on it. For the exchange and the data federation, we're now there where we have a sufficiently scoped picture of it that we can actually start looking at the how and can start looking at the what kind of dynamic do you want to create and how can you do that. That sounds a bit fuzzy, but so there are those who say that the exchange should behave like kind of like a platform where everyone can run their own e-shop on, right? Their own service, so that you don't, as a service provider, don't have to worry about things like how do I engage in a financial transaction with a university that I've never met. So if you want to create a dynamic where all the research performing institutions and all the RIs can basically become service providers, well, that could be a very interesting dynamic, but it has certain consequences. You can slam that dynamic immediately dead by saying that everyone has to go through a very, very, very thorough process before you're allowed in. Then that's just not going to happen. So you have to think about these things. So the report is organized the way it is. The scoping, as in what's important to view from a financial sustainability point of view, and then the meat of the matter is in the 3 sections that each start with financial sustainability. And then there are some conclusions and next steps. Important to remember is that this is an interim report. The conclusions are most definitely not final. There is a lot going on at the moment, actually, and we're going to continue working on this. The report, however, is going to be the basis for a pretty targeted consultation, targeting at the member states through the steering board, other task forces, RIs. Am I missing anyone? E-infrastructures? I think that was it, wasn't it? Projects, yes. As I said, there's a lot going on, because at the same time that we're trying to do this, there are discussions going on between the EC, the board, the secretariat, and the member states about governance and about operational models for EOSC. And we heard earlier on that the EC is actually expecting something by 2025, concrete. Otherwise, we do risk that bad things happen. If you want something to happen in 2025, you need to be pretty on the ball a couple of years before that, because it takes time to actually implement the consequences of such discussions. So that means that while we are trying to formulate a proposal for financial sustainability of something that isn't really that well defined, at the same time there are a couple of actors discussing governance and operational models that have pretty serious consequences on what we're proposing and vice versa. So that's the field that we're trying to do something in. And I think I shall leave it almost at that. Let's see. Yeah, consultation. So we're going to continue work. We're engaged with the secretariat, with the board, to kind of like find our way through this complicated dynamic that we have at the moment, and then end up at a proposal for long-term financial sustainability of that scoped bit of EOSC. Any questions?
Thank you, Jan. A comment to your last statement in that sense, yes, it's a bit of a moving whack-a-mole game sometimes to find out where we're going. The current multi-annual framework runs to 2027, so we need to start the planning before that, hence all the pre-2025 issues that are creeping up for the moment. I'm sure you will hear a lot more about that for the period and the years to come. Any further questions to Jan? Any further questions to anybody? Then we are actually right on time and hope to see you all to the dinner tonight. Thank you for coming up. Thank you for contributing. Please reach out if you get back home and find out that, oh, I had these pressing questions that I didn't get to post. Those of you that are on the forum, post it there. Those of you that aren't, get there. Otherwise, reach out to us and we will channel it in the right direction. Thank you very much.
And we're very approachable people, right? We're very nice. So just ask us questions.
Have a good evening. Thank you for your contribution and thank you for showing up.